here that Jim was just talking about. The former president said that this is another continuation of the witch hunt. That's likely what he would use if he were to be charged. But here are two top Republicans saying that this is what they believe should be the way to handle Donald Trump and to handle the role that he played in that. We're clearly condemning his conduct. And so we should note that the acting D.C. U.S. attorney was explicitly asked if they were considering charging someone like Donald Trump, and he said that everything is on the table when it comes to this. Anyone who played a role in that, if they felt they could bring charges against them, they would. And so whether or not this happens, of course, it remains to be seen. We don't know, but we are hearing from multiple people. This is a real concern for the former president, that he could be charged related to this, and clearly some Republicans think that this is a viable option.
Yeah, we did hear from the Senate Minority Leader, Caitlin Mitch McConnell, saying that he is very much suspect in the criminal justice system. He is not immune. He's a private citizen right now. He's a former president, so he could face criminal justice charges down the road. And I'm sure, as you correctly point out, he's very worried about that right now. He did say, Caitlin, and I'm just anxious to get your thought, he did say that his patriotic and beautiful movement to make America great again has only just begun. So he clearly thinks he has a political future ahead of him.
He does, and he knows that the influence that he wields, because after Jimmy Gangel broke that reporting last night, talking about just how angry and heated that conversation was as this riot was ongoing between Kevin McCarthy, of course, the top Republican in the House, and former President Trump. Remember, McCarthy went down to Florida 3 weeks after that and sought access to Trump's donor list because he knows he's going to play a big role in 2022. It's not really just the donor list that Kevin McCarthy would want. It's the president's seal of approval to try to help get Republicans to take back the House. And so what I'm told we should expect in the immediate future is that former President Trump is going to be going overseas to give paid speeches. He's likely to hold domestic rallies here at home, targeting those that he believes have crossed him politically. You can guess some of those Republican senators from today could be on that list, those that voted to convict him. And so that's what we should see in the future. I am told we'll likely see more of former President Trump in the weeks to come. He won't be playing as much of a behind-the-scenes role as he has been for the last few weeks. So whether or not we hear from him in person on this, that still remains to be seen, Wolf.
Excellent reporting, Caitlin. Thank you very much, Jim Acosta. Excellent reporting from you as well. You know, John King, I don't know what he's planning on doing, the former president of the United States, but he clearly thinks he has a political future ahead of him.
He clearly does, and this begins the next chapter. Those who are continuing to enable the former president, and those like Mitch McConnell who want to somehow exorcise him from the Republican Party or hope somebody else, a prosecutor or financial trouble or something else, takes him off the battlefield. Remember, as he was promoting his big lie, he also lied to his supporters, asked them to send him a bunch of money to fight the elections, to contest the elections. He took that money with him in a pack. So he does have tens of millions of dollars that he has at his disposal now to wage retribution, as Caitlin just said, against the Liz Cheney's of the world, against probably these 7 Republican senators, at least those who are still on the ballot there. So we'll watch this play out. It is an open question as to how long he can hold power in the Republican Party. But on this day, Wolf, 17 votes, 10 in the House and 7 in the Senate, of 261 Republicans in the United States Congress, 211 in the House, 50 in the Senate. 261 of those Republicans sided with Donald Trump on the question in the House to impeach or in the Senate to convict. So the spell is not broken. Make no mistake about it. Caitlin just mentioned Kevin McCarthy going down to Mar-a-Lago and kissing the ring. The same Kevin McCarthy we heard was on this phone call asking the president to call this off and essentially being told to go away by Donald Trump. And yet Kevin McCarthy still voted on the night of the insurrection to uphold the big lie, voted against impeachment, went to Mar-a-Lago. You don't need to know anything more else about Kevin McCarthy and how he believes he cannot become Speaker. He cannot win the majority back in 2 years without Donald Trump's help. Lindsey Graham, who, remember, right after the insurrection said, "I'm done with Donald Trump." Well, he issued a statement yesterday saying he looks forward to going to Mar-a-Lago to talk to Donald Trump, to hope that he'll be a team player in 2022. Welcome to the next chapter, which is what next for Donald Trump. But it is important to note, this is the largest bipartisan impeachment vote, even though it was just 10 Republicans in the House and 7 in the Senate. And Donald Trump has twice been impeached. Yes, he's twice been acquitted, but he has twice been impeached. There's nobody in the history books with that distinction. And the evidence presented by the managers was so overwhelming that Mitch McConnell, who voted to acquit, came to the floor and essentially said they made their case, but there's a technicality, I can't vote to convict. And said Rob Portman, another one, who voted to acquit. I was just reading his statement where he says, I am not defending the president. I'm not standing by the president. What the president did was reprehensible, and he essentially agrees with the Democrats that the president did that. So a lot of these Republicans who voted to acquit are hiding behind a technical argument that they do not believe the Senate had jurisdiction over a former president. This chapter, again, is closing, but there's a new one opening.
Only 4 presidents in American history have been impeached, and two of those presidents were Donald Trump. He's been impeached not once, but twice. He's going to have to live with that. He's going to also have to live with the fact that his 4-year term as president ended with January 6th, the very violent insurrection that occurred up on Capitol Hill, a dark day in American history.
And his party and those who stood with him are going to have to live with it as well.
Yeah, and he's also going to live with the fact that Biden got 7 million more votes than he got in the last election, even though he doesn't like to acknowledge that. He likes to acknowledge he got almost 75 million votes, but Biden got 7 million more votes. Aaron, back to you.
All right, Wolf, so, Don posing the question, so what next for Donald Trump? And that's a big question legally as well here. Right now you have impeachment, the political process now concluded with an acquittal. Let's bring in former U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara. Preet, I really appreciate you taking the time. So this is the question. When we heard Mitch McConnell, and of course we've called out his hypocrisy, but he did say in his speech that the former president is, quote, still liable for everything he did and that he hasn't been held to account yet. That's the big question. What is Trump's legal exposure for January 6th at this point?
So I think that's a real question. We've been having all these arguments with respect to the Senate trial and the procedures and whether the rules of evidence apply and what due process is and what the elements are. And there are no rules in the Senate. If the DOJ was going to think about bringing charges with respect to the January 6th insurrection, they're going to have to do a lot more than what the House managers did, notwithstanding the fact that the House managers did a terrific job. You're not going to be able to prove your case by bringing in newspaper articles or by using hearsay or by making certain kinds of arguments that are of a political nature. That can't happen in federal court, and the DOJ wouldn't authorize that. So I think it's a little bit more of an uphill battle, even though the trial in the Senate for political reasons was an uphill battle. But I think they will probably take a serious look at it. The leadership of the DOJ is not installed yet under the Biden administration. And as someone pointed out earlier, Merrick Garland has a confirmation hearing coming up soon. Probably he will not answer any question so as not to prejudge the issue of criminal exposure for Donald Trump with respect to January 6th. But I think it's a very open question, and they'll probably at least look at it.
So I guess look, it's Biden's DOJ, and I know you say, well, we don't know what Merrick Garland will do. He's not going to want to talk about it, but it's Biden's DOJ. And I say that in the sense of wherever the facts may lead you, there is going to be the political question that's going to be put out there, right? So does what McConnell said give cover to Merrick Garland, the Biden DOJ, to go after Trump at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the platonic ideal for an attorney general and for a Department of Justice is that in the same way you don't make your decisions based on what the president says, even if it's the president who appointed you, and in the same way you don't pay attention to political wins, you do what is right and proper and just under the law and the facts. You don't take into consideration the fact that a Senate Majority Leader, for whatever reasons, he chose to make those statements, notwithstanding his vote in the other direction. You don't take those into account. Will it make it easier if they choose to open an investigation, perhaps bring a prosecution? Yes. Speaking of the ideal universe, you're not supposed to care what politicians think about prosecutions or failures to prosecute.
But you're saying that you think it's a steeper hill to climb. I mean, definitionally, obviously, with the criminal definition of, say, inciting an insurrection. But how would you see this? Would it be worth pursuing criminal charges for whoever may have the jurisdiction to do so against the president?
Well, I think you have to make a threshold question of whether or not you pursue the investigation. And then, obviously, the next distinct phase is you decide to bring charges or not bring charges. And there are probably other things aside from incitement to insurrection. There's, seditious conspiracy. There are a whole bunch of other things you can look at. But I think the threshold question is, do you open up the inquiry? And do you start asking questions of people who are around Donald Trump? Do you start gathering other evidence? Do you start interviewing people who might have some understanding of the president's knowledge and intentions on that day? We had allusions to that. We had, press reports about that at the Senate trial, but you'd have to do that in a much more rigorous, I think, and concrete way to decide whether or not a charge is okay. Now, it's also possible that you could do a preliminary sort of, internal deliberation to decide for reasons that would be known to them that you're not going to pursue an investigation because there was an acquittal in the trial in the Senate, and we've been down that road already. I don't know if those will be the considerations that Merrick Garland and his team will consider. But the first question is, do you open in the investigation? And then it depends on how the investigation unfolds.
All right, so then there's the January 6th issue, and then just going through all the other things for Trump. There's the investigation in Georgia from the Georgia Secretary of State. There's the Fulton County District Attorney in Georgia also looking into Trump's actions to overturn the vote count in Georgia. There's the Manhattan attorney for looking at tax fraud, insurance fraud, and various other things for the Trump organization. And there's the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, looking at asset inflation and things that Trump may have done to sort of lie about his net worth to try to get deals done. Those are the main ones that we know are out there. Do you think that any of these are truly significant threats to President Trump?
Well, I think the most significant threat comes from the Manhattan DA's office because their investigation is further along. It definitely is a criminal investigation. They don't do civil, lawsuits. So President Trump's liberty is in jeopardy, unlike it was at the Senate impeachment trial. And there are good lawyers there. You don't know for a fact if it'll end up in a prosecution or not. But they've been spending a lot of time. They've got a lot of documents. They've won a lot of court victories. And they're serious about going about these kinds of investigations. So I would say the biggest jeopardy to Donald Trump is in Manhattan.
And just like taking a step back, right? Because you obviously, as the former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, you know New York so well. You're very familiar with Donald Trump. He is someone who has skated past the law for his entire career. Is there anything in any of this that makes you think the outcome will be different?
No, you can't predict. But sometimes when you tempt fate, I'm not speaking as a lawyer here, but just as an observer of human history and life, and you cause yourself to be scrutinized by lots and lots of different people, just like the people around Donald Trump, by the way. All these people who have been convicted of crimes around Donald Trump probably would have skated also because the spotlight and the scrutiny wasn't upon them. And when you have so many different people in so many different places taking a look, and you have so many different things that he has done, at some point luck runs out.
All right. Preet, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I said Preet Prahara, the former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Let me start with you. He's just going through some of the other things here. It's not just inciting insurrection, which Mitch McConnell gave his personal opinion that this didn't reach that legal standard, but that's Mitch McConnell's personal opinion. Preet's also mentioning seditious conspiracy, and other things. What other things? What ones are the biggest threat to Trump? Or do you think he just never sees charges?
So the Justice Department really is going to be the key player here, and we're at a moment of truth for the Justice Department because we are coming off of 4 years of unprecedented politicization of DOJ by Donald Trump and by Bill Barr in particular. Now we have a new DOJ in place. The President, Joe Biden, has said, I will be hands-off. He needs to make good on that. It will come to Merrick Garland to make this decision. Now, Preet said correctly, the first step is, do you open an inquiry? I'll go a step farther and say, yes. You have to open an inquiry into the president's conduct regarding January 6th. You need what we call predication, which just means you need some basis of fact that could be a crime. And I think even Mitch McConnell gave us that much in his remarks. Now, do you get to a charge? That's going to be a question for the prosecutors based on all the facts.
Right, and of course, we should note, there's going to be people who are going to say it's political, but Joe Biden so far said getting rid of those attorneys, as everybody does when they come in office, but keeping the one looking into Hunter Biden and John Durham, of course, who's looking into the origins of the Russia investigation. So far making it clear, it's already started under Trump's people, not going to interfere. But Laura, when you hear what Preet said, do you think that there will be charges?
I think there's going to be investigations, and the ones that are already happening in terms of the finances, in terms of New York, Fulton County may or may not pan out. She may have made some missteps by doing early interviews prior to having witnesses. I don't know how that's going to pan out ultimately. But the idea here is, remember, the DOJ is going to prioritize the most violent and nefarious crimes before they look at issues that are going to be perhaps, or can we guarantee a conviction? There are hundreds of people right now who are being charged with actually carrying out the insurrection. And you can bet that the majority of them, based on what the defense has said, based on what McConnell has said today, based on what the House impeachment manager said, they are pointing to following their ringleader, who they thought, the president, of course, then Trump, And so he is going to be the undercurrent of all of these hundreds of investigations. So not looking at him as a factor in any of these leading to an investigation would be absolutely odd to do so. And so he's going to be a part of it regardless if it's him who is the direct actual defendant or not. But remember, there's other people at that rally. The impeachment touched President Trump. What about Congressman Mo Brooks? What about Don Jr.? What about Rudy Giuliani? All of these things are going to be part of the conversation in terms of what criminal activity or criminal charges could be brought for all those people as well.
And yet it seems that the best place to hold him to account was the place that just failed to do so, Ross, just to be clear.
And I've been representing public officials for decades. The way I size it up, if he were my client, is unless something new comes out, unless something big comes out, I wouldn't be so worried if I were him about, charges related to this insurrection. And by new and big, I mean, there are all these investigations. There are going to be prosecutions. The people who are prosecuted, in most cases, they are going to plead guilty. Many of them might be very interested in cooperating. And so unless there's, something that, to bring it up the chain to Trump, I wouldn't be that worried about that. If you were my client, I'd tell him, stay away from, the Oath Keepers, stay away from, anybody who's involved. Well, but I would be worried about, concern for him about the New York investigation.
The New York investigation.
I think that's where his real exposure
fraud, insurance fraud. We're waiting for the Supreme Court final ruling on taxes and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd be more worried about the New York investigations. First of all, you have a president of the United States who has made it very clear that he does not want his Congress to spend its life or his Justice Department to spend its life investigating Donald Trump. Now, he has said things like that before January 6th. I presume that is still the case. You're going to have a huge investigation, a 9/11 style investigation into January 6th in Congress. You need to see what comes out of that. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I would say, Donald Trump was your client. The reason you would be nervous is that you don't know what he's going to do next. And, never underestimate that and that possibility that Donald Trump could yet again cause trouble.
Well, and he has already emerged with, wait till you hear from me next, right? Just quiet for a couple weeks here while we get through this, and now it's already.
Don't forget civil liability. I mean, a lot was talking about the criminal context of things, but civil liability is a really big thing in terms of it's a lower standard of proof, essentially, in order to prove your case. It's not the idea that we think about, did he meet the criminal standard, et cetera. It's about whether this person contributed, essentially, to somebody's death, somebody's maiming, their gouging, we're hearing about fingers being gone, destruction of property, a whole host of things. So there could be, and of course, don't forget what happened in Georgia in terms of the investigation. I know Fulton County's talking about one thing, but that telephone call to Raffensperger, there are election fraud related and election interference related things as well. So he's not out of the woods, but you're right when you say you're talking about trying to hold a president accountable. Impeachment was what the founding fathers did, but all is not lost.
I mean, what about when you look at Officer Smith, who was there that day and shot himself and killed himself on his first day back at work? He had been injured with a head injury that day. Could his wife say, she has already said, if he didn't go to work that day, he would be alive? Is his family someone who could try to hold former President Trump accountable?
It's such a terribly tragic situation. I think the question is going to be, can they show some causal link between Donald Trump's actions and the injury? And one thing that I think is really important, the impeachment that just concluded will absolutely provide leads to prosecutors. If I'm a prosecutor, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to subpoena McCarthy and Meadows, right? And by the way, they're not going to have some Senate voting against that.
And you're saying you can actually do that and get them and get the information from them, which would not have happened in the Senate trial.
The criminal subpoena, they will not be able to fight off a criminal subpoena. There's going to be no Senate there to come to their rescue, and potential leads for potential civil litigants, people who might sue because they claim that they sustained damages based on this conduct. So that impeachment trial is going to have long legs in the courts.
So could we, Russ, hear from Kevin McCarthy, all these, what Jamie Raskin's saying, and they made their case without witnesses, but will the American people hear from some of these people who have such crucial information from that day?
It depends what Congress does. I mean, the process Ellie's talking about is a grand jury process,
right,
where testimony would be in secret. And Ellie is a much more aggressive prosecutor than I think most. And the notion that, a new leadership at the Department of Justice, for one of their first acts, is going to be to go start, issuing, federal grand jury subpoenas to senior members of Congress. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's unlikely.
I wouldn't hold my breath about that. I mean, that is why, actually, Judge Merrick Garland is such a perfect person to head the Justice Department now, because he is so well respected on both sides of the aisle, and he's in a very tough position. But I don't think people are going to say, you're doing this because you hate Donald Trump. I don't.
Well, Lindsey Graham certainly will.
Well,
but
Lindsey,
there's Lindsey Graham. He'll say that about anybody.
I mean, I have to say that. Let's forget about Lindsey Graham, but there's the notion that he and others say that all of this is driven by some hatred. I mean, I think that's one thing I sort of took away today from those 43 people, the Republicans, that Lindsey Graham and others are saying, this is totally driven today by hatred of Donald Trump. And I think the more investigation you do about this, that will not stand up to history. And what drove this is going to be investigated and reinvestigated. And those statements will be proven to be completely and utterly false.
It's also likely that they may wait to do any prosecution in terms of the criminal side until after a congressional investigation gets done, because they don't want the same issue they had with, say, the Mueller report, where you had the prosecutors chomping at the bit, wondering about the subpoena versus what's going to happen in the criminal court and with investigation, et cetera. So that it might be something similar to that. And again, the idea and the quest for truth and full transparency and what precisely happened, we still had yet to see the full accounting. Although they did meet their burden of proof, I think, you still don't have all of the information about what took place. So a bipartisan commission in Congress designed to give that information might be the precursor to any criminal prosecution at the federal level, because until you have that, you're stepping on toes. It's about who is going to take the lead, and you're going to have the same issues about whether the members of Congress will respond to the bipartisan commission versus the criminal prosecutors, not wanting to talk to one over the other. It might be more prudent to wait until that investigation takes place, and that might be the out for Garland and Biden.
And there'll always be this historical irony that the greatest speech of indicting President Trump will be Mitch McConnell. Just to say that. All right, Wolf, back to you.
Yeah, it was a tough speech, but then he voted to acquit. All right, stand by. CNN's Manu Raju and Jeff Zeleny, they're both up on Capitol Hill for us. That's where they've been nonstop. Jeff, you just had a chance to speak with one of the